I like the way this feel. Yeah. Let my soul cry. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Minister, we gonna speak from the heart on this one. I'm performing lyrical funerals, no obituary. I killed your boy and brought him back to life. Pet cemetery. My anointing not based on attendance at a seminary. Scarlet witches, they attracted to the visionary. Everywhere I go, I bring the word with me, missionary. Soldiers drafted in the war machine, military. Pay attention, what I'm saying to you, legendary. You got the demeanor of a front desk secretary. That mean you take the calls, but you don't make the calls. That's why you hate, cause ain't nothing fake about me at all. Now I dare you try to say that with a straight face. My delivery in tip-top great shape. I'm too advanced for you, light years, space age. No evolution for you cavemen, stone age. I'm a thoroughbred, rock solid. I came from the bottom to the top, rock climbing. I grew up in the hood, pros and cons. That's that full court pressure when the ambulance roll out the stretch. Why can't you see it's not logical? If you live diabolical, boy, your point of view smaller than the hair follicle molecule. This for all of them that follow you, smoking all of them barbecue. When I pull up, your voice don't correct itself with no auto-tune. I got a whole nother level that I can enter whenever I gotta deal with the devil. I pick a whole nother method. I hear a whole lot of yapping. They wanna see my reaction. Really, I hate in the community making it happen. I don't really think they understand the dilemma. They ain't looking at the man in the mirror. I can't say it any clearer. The plan is very simple. It's time to start playing in the temple. Before somebody come and put the can on your temple. Reaching like a baby with his hand for the nipple. The Grand Reaper coming with his hand on the sickle. In the van coming with a ram with it. When the van come and get him. I am so glad that I changed up. Made it out of where I came from. Watch for the slide and the hook of the slow ball, fastball, and that change up. That ghetto lifestyle, it changed us. Go back to visit, it ain't changed much. Only difference is now the way that my brain process information. And Satan, but after my license, day one, let me say something. Only reason that I'm still alive today because God's grace is amazing. Just another raisin in the sun. Dream deferred when things occurred. Now you getting served right on the curb like a lemonade stand. I just gave you the benediction, let the whole church say amen.
Peace, peace, peace. What it is, family. Shalom and salam. It's your brother Tavon Sueno, aka the Orthodox Moor. And real quick, family, I've shared a bunch of my DNA results. I've shared my 23andMe. I've shared a bunch of third-party stuff from I think DNA Land and My True Ancestry, etc. But I got a couple more of my DNA results to show. I got my family tree DNA results in and my heritage results in. And now that I got all that information, I'm going to be showing my, when I'm done with that and showing those results, I'm going to be showing my GEDmatch information that links to all of them. And something that I thought was interesting about this, and one of the reasons why I submitted my DNA to different companies is I noticed that they had different regions that they tested for, and different regions in particular when it came to Jewish ancestry. So I noticed that with 23andMe, they only identified the Ashkenazi Jewish ancestry, or that was the only group that they tested for, or that was the only group that they identified. Let me just say it like that. So when I took that test, I told all my people, so like, yeah, I got a hunch that either my knowing my family background, that I was like, I thought that either my Jewish DNA is going to get thrown into the Ashkenazi, or it's going to get thrown into like the North African Midwest joint, or Midwest, Western Asian joint, Middle Eastern joint. And so when I showed my 23andMe results, there was a portion that came from Ashkenazi. I was like, yep, that's what I thought. But that's all they tested for. So after that, I sent my DNA Family Tree DNA and also to My Heritage, because they actually test for multiple different types of Jewish DNAs. They test for, or like Family Tree tested for, I believe, Sephardic / Maghrebi. They test for Ashkenazi. They test for Ethiopian. I believe they test for Mizrahi. I believe that's I believe, no, I don't think they test for Ethiopian. They either test for Ethiopian or Yemenite, one of the two, but they don't test for both Yemenite and Ethiopian. My Heritage is dope because they test for all of them. They test for, well, not all of them, but all of the above that I just mentioned. They test for Ashkenazi, they test for Mizrahi, they test for Yemenite, they test for Ethiopian, and they test for, they kind of lump, again, both of them lump Sephardic Maghrebi together. I wish they kind of split it up a little bit. Maghrebi comes before Sephardic. Maghrebi is the North African Jewish concept, going from Egypt to Timbuktu to Morocco. You know what I'm saying? The Sephardic are those Jews that and Israelites that went to Spain and then came back into to North Africa after the expulsion and whatnot. So the same population, just a little bit further down the road, intermingle with a few other people, and they coming back into the neighborhood. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, I was intrigued to see what my DNA was going to say in Family Tree, based upon the fact that they test for different regions and different groups of people, etc. I wanted to see where they would throw any of my Jewish DNA, if any. I also had my uncle take 23andMe, my mother's brother. He took a 23andMe and took a Family Tree as well, and we both got our Y DNAs done. I didn't get mine done with the Family Tree. I just got mine done with 23andMe. And I was shown to have the EM33/EM132. He was shown to have the EM34/EM123, which is the Natufian DNA. And I'll be showing his DNA along with some of my mother's, because she got a whole different set of tests done. She did the My Heritage and whatnot. She has yet to do the 23andMe if she wants to, because she didn't get any haplogroup stuff, and she wants to confirm that we all have the same maternal haplogroup and whatnot. But my uncle showed that he had the same maternal haplogroup as me, A2G, with 23andMe. And what was interesting is we found that with Family Tree DNA, that they gave you a multitude of levels of the Y DNA to test. So we tested the smallest form, like just 12. I think they compared like 12 from 12 to 24 to something else. They had a bunch of different ways of testing the Y DNA. So we just got the smallest form of it. And so it said that he was EM35, my uncle, /EM215. Now, when you understand how the clades work, if he would have got a more specific test, if he would have gotten the Y DNA deeper, it most likely would have shown the EM34, which is a subclade of the E1B1B concept. But it is the Natufian concept. So what's interesting about that is it shows that different companies are testing your DNA differently, and they have different default methods and whatnot. So you might be getting different Y results or different results, period, based upon their testing methods and their regions and how they look at your DNA. So you really want to look at these different companies and how they're testing your stuff and what methods they're using and compare and contrast. And you want to understand that going in so you can understand how to interpret your results. So a lot of us might end up coming up with like Ashkenazi Jewish DNA when we look at 23andMe, right? A lot of us. For instance, we saw that Garfield was 3% Ashkenazi Jewish. He had more Jewish DNA than me in 23andMe. However, it's very possible that he has Jewish DNA of another sort, and it's just throwing it into Ashkenazi because that's the only type that they test for, and it's the closest thing that they can match it to. If he was to show his results in Family Tree DNA or My Heritage, he might show a completely different kind. So, for instance, when my uncle took the 23andMe, it showed Ashkenazi Jewish for him as well. However, when he took the family tree, neither he nor I showed up with Ashkenazi Jews. As a matter of fact, his showed up with the Sephardic Maghrebi. And a very interesting thing happened with mine. So with that, let me just share my screen real quick, family. Because I definitely want y'all to see this one. So this is me, Tyvon Swain. AKA Tyvon Swain now. And you can see all the different parts of the map that are. Let me make sure this is yeah, y'all can see that. That's what's up. Let me make it big. There we go, family. You can see all the different parts of the map that are lit up, and you can see how Africa is lit up in a bunch of different interesting spots. And this is what I want to focus on. First, I want to point out the fact that Spain does not light up at all. And if you saw my last video, if you saw my my 23andMe results, you'll notice that I am 36.4% Spain Portuguese in that one. But Spain doesn't come up at all. That DNA gets thrown somewhere else, and it's very interesting. So we'll just see how this plays out. So it says here that I'm 43% African, that I'm 15% Nigerian, shout out to the Nigerian fam. It says I am 15% Ghana, Togo, and Benin, which is next door and overlaps. So when you put those two together, that's 30%, which is real consistent to, I believe, my 23andMe that says I'm like 28% Nigerian, I believe, either 25 or 28%. So that's not too far off there. You can see where Nigeria and Benin overlap, etc. Let's see here. It says I'm 6% from Guinea and Sierra Leone. From Guinea, Sierra Leone, excuse me. This is something that I see real consistent in my DNA is the Sierra Leone concept and the Guinea concept, along with the Nigerian concept. Shout out to all my people in Guinea, Sierra Leone. It says Southern Congo Basin. Talking about Angola and Congo and Zambia, etc. This is consistent with my 23andMe that says I'm 2.6% from this region. So 3%, 2.6%, give or take. That seems real consistent. And here we go, another interesting joint. So we have the Western Lake Victoria Basin. So we see that covers parts of Kenya, parts of Uganda, Rwanda, Burundi, parts of Tanzania, parts of the Democratic Republic of Congo. Shout out to all my people over in that way, you know what I'm saying? But this is already shown an interesting pattern here. And this is where it got real interesting for me, because something that came up in my uncle's 23andMe and something that came up in my mother's my heritage was the fact that they were around 3.5% Middle Eastern, give or take, and which contained going from the Levant to Yemen, etc. And so what was interesting was like I was intrigued to see how would that show up in my different DNA results. And at first, because my when you see my JED match, you'll understand why I was intrigued by this, because I was trying to figure out where I was getting certain results from, because I was you'll see in a couple of videos I do to where I was comparing myself to a Somalian girl, because a lot of my results ended up looking like I was like from over there. I was like, how is this working out? But this is one of the first two surprises that I saw in my results here in Family Tree, is that again, you'll see where my Spain gets kicked into another part of Africa and other places. And then it seems though, and this is interesting. It's almost like they took my mother's DNA and gave me the ancient origin of it. So for instance, you'll see here that I'm less than 2%. So if they're 3.5%, they were like 3.3 to 3.8%, something like that, right? Different results, right? Again, from MyHeritage to 23andMe. So you cut that in half, that's less than 2%. So it's almost like they're saying the genetic origin of all that is the Eritrea, Djibouti, Ethiopia, Somalia region. And by the way, shout out to all my Somalian family. Well, you know what I'm saying? If my man Ahmed sees this from Speaker's Code, you know what it is for him. Peace and blessings, Ahmed. Also, my man Khalid from Somali speakers and whatnot. Assalamu alaikum, akhi. I'm definitely gonna be claiming that one for a long time. Whenever I see them cats, for real. But there's another interesting. I'm gonna be pointing towards that in a whole another video, where I talk about the link between East Africa and North Africa. But moving right into that, what's interesting is they put me at 24% North African. And what's interesting about that is the North African here, a lot of times they cut off, they'll cut off parts of Mauritania, and they'll definitely cut off Mali. But here, North Africa includes Egypt, Libya, Tunisia, Algeria, Morocco, the Western Sahara, Mauritania, and Mali. And again, family, so just so you understand, Timbuktu is right here. And you're going to hear me talking a lot about Timbuktu. And you're going to hear me talk a lot about this part of Africa and how there's migrations coming from here to Timbuktu. A lot of people know about migrations from the Levant to Spain, etc., or from where we at? From like Babylon to Spain, etc. But a lot of people don't know that we got migrations from the Middle East and Ethiopia going all the way down, and a lot of people know it now, but going down here with the Limba. Not only do we have that, but we have verifiable migrations from the same places going to West Africa and also to North Africa. But what I thought was real intriguing is they took all my Spanish DNA, and they kicked it into North Africa. Like, so basically showing the source of where it came, where parts of it come from. Not all of it. They didn't put all of it there, because a portion of it ends up coming into. You get to see who was also part of the melting pot of Spain and who was coming in, etc. And when you understand that there was Romans there, when you understand there was Visigoths there, when you understand that there was migrations that came in after the Moors came in, once you understand that there was a lot of people that came into Spain. This is interesting because it basically, this chart kind of shows you what made Spain up at certain points in time. So for instance, let me get into my so just to be clear, so at 43%, I'm 43% sub-Saharan African, and it's saying that I'm 24% North African, 67% African altogether. And I believe 23andMe said I'm 46% sub-Saharan African, etc. Now getting into my European DNA, it says 9% Scandinavian, which again is not inconsistent with certain aspects of the Visigothic breakdown. Once you understand where they actually come from in like the Ingvaeonic breakdown of the children of Ingvi, and the sons of Ingvi, and the kings that come from him, etc., and the Anglo-Saxon people and all that. But shout out to to all my Scandinavian people. There's a lot about Scandinavian culture I do appreciate, and I do love quite a bit, as a matter of fact. But I'm going to be touching on Scandinavia in a whole nother set of videos at one point. Shout out to all my people in Scandinavia, and shout out to all my people in the Maghrebi. I forgot to shout them out. And then I have 5% Central Europe. Again, this also makes sense once you understand the locale, when it comes to Spain, etc., and what was going on in Al-Andalus, and what was like before and after the Moors were there, like from the Romans to the Christians. Once you understand that whole time period, it's like I said, this is interesting. It's like it took my mother's DNA and gave me the ancient origins of where it all came from. Like it hit me with the 24% North African, 5% Central Europe, the 9% Scandinavia. Like this is all what Spain would look like. And then this one was real interesting. And I'll bring this one up when I show my MyHeritage, because my MyHeritage gives me the most Native American out of all of my DNA tests. But this one is interesting because of one, it's still consistent with the Ingveanic people and the people who make up part of the Visigothic people or whatnot. But there's a large aspect of here that deals with migrations that would be similar. People would have DNA similar to my Native American people or whatnot. I mean, when I showed my A2G maternal haplogroup connections and whatnot, I did a video all about my A2G maternal haplogroup. There were people in this area, in these northern areas, that were also connected to the A2G or Native American type haplogroups. And you can see that there, when you go to even like the northern parts of Norway or this part of Russia, etc., you have people who look Native, who would be similar to Asian looking or Native American people that have the A2G haplogroup. What's also interesting about that is when I do my JED matches, it's interesting. Like, so with the autosomal concept, they match me up with a lot of people who are not only. So there's a lot of North African they match me up with, a lot of North African Jewish people, like Libyan, Moroccan Jewish, North African Jewish, Libyan Jewish, etc., Algerian Jewish. But they'll also link me up with certain Ashkenazi and Romanian Jewish populations and Belarusian populations, etc. Which is interesting because there's when the Jews left Spain, when they were expelled, they went a bunch of different directions. Some went to the Netherlands, like over here. Some went to North Africa. Some went to West Africa, parts of West Africa, as we know. Some went all the way through Bulgaria to Romania. Went into Turkey, and even went back up this way into Europe or whatnot. So it's interesting. Like in one level, they're showing me like where I come from, and on another level, they kind of show me where people went. It's extremely interesting how the autosomal works. Extremely interesting, but that'll all make more sense when I show you my GEDmatch results. And then going further, family, getting into the Americas, they're saying I'm 11% here. I believe in 23andMe, they say I'm 13%. And in my MyHeritage, like they give me a crazy high percentage. They're saying like 18 some odd percent there. But again, I have the Amerindian, the Central American 5%. Shout out to all my Central American Indian family. You know what I'm saying? They say that I have Amerindian North America 5%, and I love the picture that they show here with the Pueblo culture and whatnot, because I do legitimately, like, my mother comes from New Mexico or whatnot, so I love that they use this picture here. And I love this picture because it also it's very adjacent to the culture in Mali, where the Dogon culture is, where they have very similar structures like this, and I'll definitely be touching on that in a whole other video. And then also says that I have 1% Amerindian Central South Mexico. Definitely like that picture with the pyramids. You know what it is. Shout out to all my people in Central and South Mexico. And then it goes on to say that I have in my Asian DNA that I have less than 2% Southern Siberian. Again, this is also consistent with the migration pattern of where the people from where the Native American people come from that I do connect to on the A2G level. So yeah, I definitely wanted to show the family that. What I definitely want to show though is I just recently did a show that you can check out, family, with the twins from the End of the World Ministries, Minister Teyu and Minister Yakoba. Had Brother Anonymous and Brother Yukonon on there. Shout out to them as well. Where we were talking about the E1B1A doctrine. And I was talking about how it relates to the conscious community and also the Israelite community, etc. And to me, how I feel like it's being used either intentionally or unintentionally to divide people of Africa and to divide Africa, period. And so when you see DNA results that look like this, there's a lot of things we got to slow down and talk about. Like, how does this happen? What does this look like? Because we have people who are claiming to be, for instance, West African, who have DNA that comes from over here, etc. Like, so I'll be showing, like, again, like, so if I'm EM33, EM132, and I'm being told, like, if you look at that video where I totally focus on that, there's all kind of people in West Africa who have that DNA. So you can't be just E1B1A and be West African. You can look at the Haus and the Fulani just by themselves and see the vast array of different haplogroups that they have. Like, for instance, like I connect very highly with the Fulani. Shout out to all my Fulani people or whatnot, right? They have EM132. They have E1B1A. They have EM215. They have R1B. They have T, etc. At the same point in time, on an Israelite concept, I got people in Ethiopia. I got people in parts of Kenya and other parts of Tanzania and whatnot that have variations of EM215 and variations of Natufian DNA, etc. That when I look at it scientifically, they're talking about that haplogroup potentially going back to, like, the EM34, for instance, right? They're talking about that one potentially being going back to Abraham, because they're saying that one is being found amongst the Kohens, a portion of the Kohens, not just the J marker. People got to understand it, not just the J marker, but that's also being found amongst the Kohens around the world, and also it's being found amongst the Sayyids, the people who say they're from the lineage of the Prophet Muhammad. So what that means is that they're considering that one as one of the top potential markers for the Abraham marker, for Abraham's DNA, because you're finding it amongst people who say they're from the lineage of Ishmael and people who are from the lineage of Isaac. So that's very, very interesting, family. But again, whether they have Abraham's marker or whatnot, right? There's people who are in East Africa, in South Africa, who are claiming to have DNA, or claiming to be Israelites, that have different haplogroups than E1B1A. I mean, look at the Lemba. They're a prime example. The Lemba got J1. The Lemba got T. The Lemba have a different E marker, etc. So I'm showing this to show a whole bunch of things. A, how these different DNA companies work, but B, to definitely illustrate how we shouldn't be dividing Africa based solely on one haplogroup. That doesn't make sense, particularly if Africa is the most genetically diverse place out there, in a sense of just in terms of diversity, phenotypical diversity, and genetic expression. Hold on, let me see if I'm boring the chat to death right quick. Shout out to my man Cube in the chat. He said, so y'all not Hebrews. Well, as a matter of fact, Cube, if you were listening to what I said, so I had my uncle take this same test, right? And I was talking about how my Spanish DNA all got thrown into North Africa, ironically, an interesting situation, right? and how my mother's and my uncle's Middle Eastern DNA seems to have got thrown into East Africa, into the Horn, showing the genetic origins thereof. But what's interesting about that, like I said, Cube, if you probably missed it in the video, I'll repeat it one more time, but I don't want to be too redundant. Is that so? My uncle's DNA, he showed I believe close to 50%, 52% Southern Mediterranean. Of that, in Spain, he had Spain, or he had Spain, Portugal. He had Basque, and he also had. Now this was interesting. They showed it on the map here, and I'll get it. I'll show it. I'll do a video on this at one point. But on the map here, they showed 3 things lit up, but it was marked differently. They had all of this lit up in red, a small portion for the Basque, and a small portion for, or then they had Spanish lit up in, I think, blue or something like that, right? But the red had to do with being, I believe, had to do with being the Sephardic Jewish part, Sephardic Maghrebi Jewish part, and they have it listed here on the side as not as European. They have it listed as Middle Eastern. They have it just like they have the Maghrebi Egypt in Middle East, North Africa. They have the Sephardic part here in the Middle East. So Q, what I'm saying is that whatever DNA I had that's connected, whatever autosomal DNA I have that's connected to the Sephardic Jewish DNA that my mother has, etc., that got thrown into North Africa and also got thrown over here, or her Middle Eastern DNA, in terms of where the origin's from. And when you look into the haplogroup that I said my uncle is and my grandfather is, migration patterns are consistent with the east to west concept. Consistent. But Q, when you look at it again, we keep talking about this Natufian concept. And we keep talking about this overlap as to where a lot of us get this autosomal DNA, if you're listening to what Anonymous and I are talking about, from this Ethiopia, Kenya area. Because when you look at the Natufian DNA, it's centered in 2 spots. It's centered here, where you get the highest concentrations, and it's centered here, where you get the highest concentrations. And again, like we said, through here, there was a major point of migrations, going westward, going north, and going south. Migrations coming from here, going here, and going south. So no, Q, we're not saying we're not Hebrew. We're saying pay close attention. Pay close attention. But real quick, I also wanted to show something about that as well. As a matter of fact, for what Q's talking about. Let me shut that one down. Let me share this one right quick. Yeah, so this is my 23andMe genetic history chart, my DNA map, right? In terms of it going back in time, right? And so you can see where I have the Spanish, Portuguese, Nigerian, Ghanaian, all that, right? Angolan, Congolese, Senegambian, Native American, British Irish, Egyptian, African hunter-gatherer, and the Ashkenazi Jewish is one of my oldest ones. So this is one of the things I wanted to talk about, my suspicions being correct, because like I said, once it was compared to other genetically Jewish populations, it said Sephardic Maghrebi. So that means that one of my oldest DNAs is the Sephardic Maghrebi DNA. Again, which is consistent when you look at the EM34 haplogroup that my uncle and my grandfather was on my mother's side. Because that's the Natufian joint. That's basically like the OG North African DNA. The OG North African DNA. And again, they were in the Levant and they were in Ethiopia, Kenya, Yemen, all them type of things. So I'm showing you this here. Like, so I got my West African as some of my nearest stuff, right? I got the Spain, Portugal stuff was some of my nearest stuff. And when you start getting older with it, It lets you know I'm going into North Africa. Again, there was a portion of my DNA that they weren't able to transfer or able to detect or able to put somewhere. And I think it was like 0.6 or something like that. I got to double check what it was. But I suspected that it would have been the broadly North African, Western Asian. When I first looked at it, I was like, yeah, I bet you that's where it should go. So I have, again, the Egyptian, the African hunter-gatherer, which is something that Anonymous keeps talking about, right? He keeps talking about this whole concept of like where these Khoisan, or where certain pygmies come through in certain migration patterns as well. So a lot of us are going to find this interesting mix here, right? Of where North Africa or where Africa in the hunter-gatherers and this Jewish stuff starts intermixing. So a lot of people who see Ashkenazi Jewish in 23andMe, this is what I'm trying to tell you. Go get tested in another DNA with another DNA company who actually has a diverse background in what they test for, which will include some form of North African, East African, and Yemenite DNA, because you'll find out, you know what? Some of your oldest DNA might be your Jewish DNA or your Israelite DNA. So, which is very consistent with what I'm seeing. Like, so I've always consistently said that I'm a Moorish American Muslim of Israelite descent. I stipulate that my mother is a descends from North African Jews by way of Spain and Mexico, right? And so you see the Spanish Portuguese, you see the aspects of North Africa, and then you see the Maghrebi Jewish, which here is saying Ashkenazi Jewish. Real quick, I'm going to stop showing this one, and I'm going to show another one. Oh, hold on. My fault, family. I just closed it out on accident. But I'm going to show my uncle so you can see what his looks like. So you can see what his map looks like. I'm not going to show you all his DNA. I got to talk to him about that one first, but I'm going to show you just the map on the joint right quick. Or the same thing I just showed you there, where it goes back in time with the DNA. My fault, family. Give me 2 seconds. Give me 2 seconds. All right, the ancestry timeline. That's what it's called. There we go. Got it. Here we go. Sorry, family, because you got to try to do things in such a way where you can share stuff without revealing too much info about the family and whatnot. But so this is my uncle's. This is my mother's brother, right? Who has the EM34, EM123, which is the Natufi market, right? So you see where his youngest is a Spanish Portuguese, which is very similar to what I ran into. The British Irish, the Native American, the Chinese, the Ghanaian, Liberian, and Sierra Leone. He has that. He also has a trace ancestry in Southeast Africa, which I thought was interesting. And then French German, which again is consistent with the once you understand, it's consistent with the Iberian concept. And then again, his 2 oldest are the Ashkenazi Jewish and then North African. So again, in family tree, it took what it said was Ashkenazi Jewish here and said it was Sephardic Maghrebi. So they're 2 old, like my uncle's 2 oldest representations on his ancestry timeline are a Sephardic Maghrebi Jewish and North African, which is again consistent with his DNA. With this haplogroup or whatnot, right? And on top of that, it's consistent with their Jed matches, because again, when I throw them into the DoCAD, my mother, my uncle, their number 1 result is Moroccan Jewish at I think at a distance of 14 for both of them, and they also have in the same project, they will have Moroccan Jewish, North African Jewish, Ethiopian Jewish, and Yemenite Jewish. So you got people like people like to go in on my man G-Con. They like to call him Big Shemite in the building. You know what I'm saying? Because he showed them on his jet match, right? But we got people like Garfield who might have some explaining to do. Because maybe that Ashkenazi Jewish isn't Ashkenazi Jewish. And if it's not, where did he get it from? We might need to see Garfield's test results in a couple other different with a couple of the different DNA companies like Family Tree or MyHeritage, etc. Because I didn't come up Ashkenazi in MyHeritage. I didn't come up Ashkenazi in Family Tree. I only came up Ashkenazi in 23andMe. Like I said, my uncle didn't come up Ashkenazi in Family Tree. My mother took Family Tree as well. She didn't come up Ashkenazi at all. And to be when I show this one, this by the way, this one is the broadly North African, Middle Eastern. When you see it, I think I have to double check, but because he did test for North African, then he also tested as the broadly North African Middle Eastern. But I think that might be, it's one or the other. But either or, it's consistent with the Maghrebi / Sephardic Jewish concept. So I wanted to show that to the people because again, I told this to a lot of my brothers and whatnot beforehand when I took my DNA tests. And I even told them a couple other things I was doing to kind of test out the system a little bit. But I thought this was very interesting to show the people in the sense that it's a good idea to go get multiple tests done if you're going to do the DNA test. And it's a very good idea to understand and to do research on what regions they test for with the different DNA companies and what methodology they use to test with. For instance, 23andMe, as a default, they give you a more specific Y DNA breakdown and maternal haplogroup breakdown than what someone like a group like Family Tree DNA will at their lowest levels. So, for instance, if you're intrigued about your Y DNA and your mitochondrial DNA, your best bang for the buck is to use 23andMe. However, I wouldn't stop there. You can compare and contrast that with other companies and whatnot. But if you want to do like a Y DNA with Family Tree and you want to compare it to the 23andMe, you don't want to do the 12 chromosomes. You want to do, I believe, the 20. I got to look at their breakdown, how they break it down. But you want to go with the level above 12 at the very least, because it won't be as specific as what the 23andMe is. But again, you definitely want to go look at how they break down the regions, what regions they test for, what regions they don't. Because sometimes one group will test for a region that another group does not test for. So you need to know how that looks, how that plays out when you're comparing and contrasting the results, and that helps significantly when you go look at something like the autosomal results in GEDmatch. So you can look at your haplogroups, you can look at your autosomal regions and whatnot, and then you can go like for multiple different places, and then go to your GEDmatch. Like, okay, this makes a lot of sense. Because you might just get the 23andMe and get some stuff in GEDmatch that you might not recognize. You might just get the Family Tree or the MyHeritage or the Ancestry DNA and get stuff you might not recognize. But if you get a multitude of different DNA companies that test for the regions differently, you can kind of get a broader scope, right? And understand what your averages look like and what potentially should be coming up, or what should be coming, or what would be consistent with your GEDmatch results, etc. So again, I'll be showing my heritage as well on a different video, and when I'm done doing that, then I'll do the compare and contrast with my GEDmatch, because I think it'll be a clearer picture once you understand my paternal haplogroup, B, my mitochondrial haplogroup, which I've already shown, and then C, all the different looks at my autosomal regions, and then go into the GEDmatch. But with that, family, I appreciate you. This has already been a way longer video than I intended it to be. I pray that y'all have a good one. Shalom to everybody in the chat. I appreciate you for your time and for your comments. I hope you found something edifying within this conversation. And with that, family, I say peace and love.